welcome to another episode of What's It Like with YORX. I am your host, YORX. And as you can see, the nice background with me, the nice greenery, we are in Jamaica. And I have with me one of my good friends from university. This is
Czedale Smallwood.
Czedale Smallwood. I'll call him Pastor Smallwood or Pastor Czedale. Which one you prefer?
Czedale Smallwood.
Czedale Smallwood.
Minister of Religion, but
Minister
that's fine.
of Religion. Good.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that actually spawned this podcast, Czedale, is that I was seeing whereby a lot of people are getting jaded with just religion and Christianity on a whole, especially young people. And I said to myself that I wanted to do something about it.
Okay.
Right, and as a result of that, we're speaking to a couple of other people before. I've even spoken to somebody who left the church, and he told me why. And you can see it in the previous episode, probably down here. And
Link in the bio.
link in the bio, exactly. But Czedale, tell me about your foray into religion and theology, and pause and pick up. And but yeah, Czedale, tell me about your foray into religion and theology, and where you have been, how you got the calling, and where you are now.
All right, interesting question. Well, it started back with my foundation. I was brought up, my parents are traditional Seventh-day Adventists. So as far back as 1984, I can remember walking with my father through the hilly interior of Coffridge down to a place called Land Settlement. And then you travel a mile or probably 2.5 kilometers to the Ancient Town Church.
Yeah.
Which is in Clarendon.
Clarendon, okay.
It's in Clarendon, actually.
Clarendon, Jamaica.
Clarendon, Jamaica.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting topography, that part of the island, because you move out of St. Ann in K Valley into Ancient Town. Once you come through that bridge, that little bridge right there, you come into Clarendon. And then when you go back over that Soldier Bridge, that back in the day used to be that wooden bridge, Bugga Bridge, but they changed it. So it was very interesting. But my father migrated to the States in 1985-86, somewhere there, and then I moved to Wild Cane. When I moved to Wild Cane, before long, of course, my mother went back to college. So the persons that we were living with, my two grandaunts, Sister Pi and Auntie Dana. Auntie Dana is a Seventh-day Adventist, but Sister Pi is a Moravian.
Oh, okay.
So she was actually the one that was in charge of the home, per se. So we used to be at church on Sabbaths, and then on Sundays we would be roaming the street as unsupervised young men.
Okay.
So they made a decision and started to send us to the Baptist church. So the Baptist church was just below where we were living in Wild Cane. And before long, I remember when I started going to high school, and I joined the cadet really early. So I was out there there was a standpipe run up by Wild Cane Square. So Wild Cane Square had Lukey's shop, or Mas Sham shop that Lukey leased, and then you have Mas Az's shop, and you have the post office. So it was a little town that people would come from everywhere, top road, bottom road, everywhere, and Guma and all of those places.
Yeah.
And come and ply the trade, do the business, because they had lots of retail outlets there and that kind of stuff, and of course the post office. So I was converged there with some of my youngsters and friends, and I was teaching them drill, how to do the about turn and that kind of stuff. And that evening I saw a group of young people coming from White Sand, and they were so unified and well spoken and all that stuff. And I inquired who they were, and I found out that they were Seventh-day Adventists. So that kind of perked an interest in me.
Oh, okay.
But the way that I became an Adventist in terms of baptized is that when I was about 13, so my father migrated when I was going 6, and I would turn 6th in November, so he left the August, and it the turbulent period there, waning teenage life and so on. You know, I got involved in, you know, gang-like activity. So police killed one of the young men that, you know, he was be technically the head, and then the second in command gunman killed him. So probably I was next in line, you know what I mean?
Wow.
And that kind of thing.
Before we go any further, we want to thank our sponsors, Walters Weddings. Based in one of the world's best countries for destination weddings, that's Jamaica, and also we have offices in Canada, Walters Weddings is your go-to media company. Whether it's photography, live streaming, drone photography, or cinematography, contact our award-winning team at waltersweddings.com and talk to Tina. We're also available for weddings as far north as Canada to as far south as South America. Now, back to our program.
Yeah, my father is a school teacher.
Yeah.
Likewise, my mother. So they're both educators. So when I was 9, my father was a disciplinarian, and of course, he's probably a 6'2", 6'3" person. He's a big guy. I'm a little bit more 6'5", 6'5.5". But there was a young man. One day I was going to my younger brother's grandmother's house. So we call her Aunt D. And it was a lonely piece of road. And he accosted me with a machete. And I'm telling you, he was like, you know, your father beat me at school and da-da-da-da-da. And, you know, he stuck it into my side. So I was there, you know, begging for my life. Because at that time, I was 9, he was probably 16, 17. So he was probably twice my size. Big guy. But so I was there begging for my life, literally. And, you know, he eased up. And when he eased up, I ran in the direction of a stone heap. And I pulled 2 stones, and he ran down on me and he put the knife right here, the machete right here. And I was like, don't kill me, don't kill me. And I begged for my life that day. He didn't. But that day I pledged in my heart that, you know, I'm going to get him before he get me. So I was 9. So that is the reason why I joined the cadet. Yeah, so that was my motive. I remember I went to Fieldcraft camp. And you have the 303, the 202 rifles, and I went, you know, 400-yard setting, you know, shooting a 303. And all I'm thinking of is him.
He's
you know,
in the
pulling
target.
that trigger, cranking, pulling that trigger. All I'm thinking of was him. I was going to get him. Well, so I told you about the young people that I saw that Saturday evening. So that was my first perked interest in Seventh-day Adventism in terms of, you know, the intelligence of the young people, their preparedness, their, you know, just, and their sense of unity.
Yeah.
Right. Even on the road, and I was like, you know, there's something about them. So I kind of felt this kind of, you know, I was felt drawn to them, per se. But it reached the point now that they were keeping a crusade, and this is 1996. And I was now 15. So at 15 years old, I'm probably 6 foot tall.
Yeah,
6 foot, 5'11", 6 foot.
Tallest person in your age group, everything.
Yeah, going 6'1" and 175, 180. So I'm
the biggest person.
I'm there. I'm of size.
Yeah.
So I decided that I'm going to get this guy. So he walked past the road for 1 week. I saw him every night. He would pass with his mother, because his mother was an Adventist, and they would go to the crusade. So I was planning in my head now. So I saved up that week, and I bought a Rambo knife.
Oh, the big long knife.
The big knife with the 3 sprung that you push right. And I bought one for $200 and something at the time.
I remember money in
yes, and I remember asking Mr. Boy, what you gonna do with it? I told him that is, you know, I'm a young cadet and we have to carry it to camp and whatnot.
Training,
you know,
yeah.
Right. But my intention was to get him. Anyhow, so I planned my strategy. I planned my ambush. So this particular Thursday night, here he was now, going to the crusade. So I had picked some grapefruits, and this is a real story.
Yeah.
Picked the grapefruits, so they, you know, they were basically in a decomposed state. So my intention now was to carry 2 or 3 of the grapefruits to the tent. So I was watching him, so my intent was now to hit him with the grapefruit, because he's an angry guy, so he would chase after me. And once he chased after me, I would ambush him around by a bridge.
You'd ambush him by a bridge?
Ambush him by the bridge, and then take off his neck with the knife and throw him over the gully. That was my intent. But that night, as I went, so I had a knife. Mom doesn't know about this, and head in the direction of the crusade. My intent is to get him for what he did to me when I was 9. When I went to the
6
tent,
years later.
Pastor Cheyenne O'Connor was preaching, and it was just about now to make the altar call when I reached the tent. And he, in this very loud, when the judgment is set and the books are open, how shall you stand? And when he said how, it felt like the entire world paused. Like I was the only person under the tent. And like he was talking directly to me.
Wow.
He said, how shall you stand on that day? I knew that I couldn't stand. So literally like the chair being an inanimate object, like the chair started to speak to me. Like the chair was like, guy, it's you the pastor talking. God is calling you.
Yeah.
Go.
Yeah.
And I was there nervous wreck and I started to tremble. At that time, the people in my community, because I have a severe anger problem, and this is all coupled with my father's removal from the home, migrated, and the relationship I had with him very close and so on.
Okay.
Right. So that turbulence and that anger and all of those things boil up, and then the home situation and all of that stuff. So I was just like a ticking time bomb.
Waiting to explode.
Waiting to explode. So that night I was supposed to explode, but in a different way, except that here I was. I don't know how I found myself at the altar, but I ended up at the altar, and I was on my knees, and I confessed my sins the night, and I cried like a baby. And I'm telling you, that thing affected the tent that night, because people were always praying for me. Lover and big boy, the big boy, dangerous one, the dangerous one. And I gave my life to the Lord that night. And the Sabbath morning I got baptized. But interestingly, that night, as I told you, I hid the knife in the banana tree. So I remember I dropped the grapefruits and stuff and I walked to the altar. I don't know how I reached there, but the Spirit took me there. But the next day I went back to look for the knife. The knife was gone and the banana tree was gone. And I've never seen them again. Nobody took it, like the entire tree and everything was gone. The Lord uprooted all of that. So just like how the tree of life was taken away from the garden, the Lord took that banana tree with that knife in it. And here I am today, so many years after, and people ask the question, how are you called? My first calling is, the Lord called me from murder. From murder. To not take somebody's life that had wronged me, because I didn't do him anything. My father was punishing him back in the day as a school, acting headmaster at one point. And he disrespected me and violated me, so he was going to get his life. But the Lord took mine that night. As it relates to ministry, a lot of people don't understand that your first calling is really to be a child of God. First, to be a Christian, to be a child of God. You have to experience some kind of a converting
spirit.
Yeah. Not just a spirit.
Conversion experience.
It's an experience that you must have. That is what validates your walk with God. Because the Lord has to call you from something. So when he's setting up his church, they are always called out of. Abraham was called out of Ur of the Chaldees.
Moses was called out of Egypt.
Moses had to un-Egyptianize himself in Midian for 40 years. So he spent 8 years preparation. When the Lord is preparing you for what he is doing, it's different from man's preparation. And so that experience validated or concretized my resolve to always be true to God. Because I know that I'm flawed and I have a broken past, but the Lord knows about it. And I am open with him, and I have seen his tender hands of mercy and care, and his voice of cheer and his grace. And like his song says, just the time I need him is always there. Because I needed him, because I needed a father figure. So, long story short in that regard, I moved from repeating grade 9 in high school. I went to Knox, top stream, but the broken family situation. I was very underperforming to getting baptized, and the year afterwards was when the police killed that guy. And I remember going to his was his funeral, which was very next to the church, which was just like 100 meters from the church. And I looked into his coffin, and I could literally see myself. There he was. They buried him with all different kind of stuff, cologne, Guinness, Rizla, weed, all kind of stuff, and probably other stuff. You know what I mean? You know how bad men bury each other, right?
Yeah.
But I marked that reality because it could have been me, and so much worse. But God. So the point that I'm making is that when God is calling you to do His work, He has to first get you out of some kind of something is working for you that you think is right for you, but this is not what God wants. But the experience of that work that you think is right is what validates. For example, Paul. Paul was a persecutor. Right? Paul was one who was wreaking havoc on the church. Well, eventually he started to wreak havoc on the kingdom of Satan. So that same aggression and passion that he was using in a wrong way, he was now using it for the right.
And it's funny you say that because I see so much of my story in yours, from the broken past, the distant relationship with father, because I am now in Jamaica for my father's funeral. And I'm gonna do something that we don't normally do in media, which is to date this interview. And this is now the 15th of June, and 2022. And my father died 1 week before the 1st of June, 2022. But in 2021, November, December, my church pastor in Canada at the time, he recommended that I do grief recovery counseling. And what a lot of people don't realize is that grief is not just about death.
No.
It's about incomplete relationships.
And broken
relationships. Right. So death, divorce, even the death of a pet, abuse, distant relationship, separation. So in doing that last year, it helped me to not just forgive my father, because I always was saying, I forgive him, but I was able to actually do the work to actively forgive him.
Okay.
And in doing that now, and I'm and I'm here now, and I used to have that anger towards him and rage towards him, but in his last years of his life, I started feeling sorry for him, because I realized that it is very hard for us as human beings to give what we never got.
So a part of your healing is when you say you're sorry for him, you're actually empathizing.
Yes.
So the component of empathy is very, very important.
Exactly.
So my background is not per se behavioral science, but I have a passion for it. So that's where, postgraduate and all of those kind of work is going towards, and mental health care. But put it this way, my broken checkered past has validated my approach to ministry over the years. And I have strong influence on bad men and those
because you're coming from
that's where exactly I'm coming from. I remember pastoring in Trelawney, and I developed a strong affinity with the underworld through funerals. So I remember I did this particular funeral, the most police and soldiers I've ever seen, and the protocol was just because of the nature of the person that died. And I remember, like the elder called me and said, some people at the church are looking for a pastor to do a funeral. And everywhere they turn, everybody rejected.
No.
And I said, tell me about the story. And I took the phone, I gave the person my number, and I went to a place called Flanker. That's in
Montego Bay,
all right.
St.
So
James,
you understand the nature of it. And did what and eventually meeting one of the dons, and that kind of situation. But suffice it to say that I remember I was in a particular place, and these particular guys, like they saw me, and one of them repeated it to somebody that pastor is a thug under the quiet. Like he has absolutely no fear, and the way he moves like one of us. And so I went, to to, you know, do the pastoral visit and preparation for the funeral. And, you know, bad men know, you know, the salute with the guineas
The
and
guineas
stuff.
and
And, right.
pour out
And,
some on the ground, yeah.
right. And that kind of stuff. And, you know, I walked into this bar and, you know, it was way down into the back end with this darkish looking red light. And, you know, I was walking and the guy, you know, stand up on him, you know, shorter than I am, but, you know, he has his presence, and he said, feel the man presence. So the man is like us, but the man just step on the other side. You know the word, you know. He just is there talking to me, and they said, you know, so on and so forth. So I did what I was supposed to do. When I was leaving, you know, he offered me something to drink. So of course, you know, I said, no man, you have to drink, you have a family, you know. You come and say you're good, you know. Because when I went there, you know, I had no need to lock my car, wind up my windows or anything. Because when I look into one of the tree, nearby, somebody was there, guarded, right? They were not just in the tree, but these guys are the sentinels. You know, like I tell you, I have a military background, so they, you know, so I'm scouting out the place, and you know, everybody, even the guy that came to greet me, you know, they're loaded. And you drive to a particular section and you walk into the community. So you literally have to walk in. You can't drive in. Right. So that is one of the why the, you know, urban policing is so difficult in some of these complex communities because of how the topography and setup is, right. So, you know, they can, you know, abscond and so on and so forth.
Get away nearby bushes.
Right. So when I think of all of that, you know, I remember he was saying, you know, X, Y, and Z, and I could give you several other, you know, situations. Like one tried to disrespect me one time, and I pulled him off my car. Yeah, man, I just washed my car and went into the town. Like the devil just sent him to me, and he sat on my car, clean off his shoes and the tire, and like, you know, and I said, you don't read the Bible. He's like, what are you talking about? I said, do you read the Bible? I said, you know the story of David and Goliath. He said, well, I am David. And I won't tell him what else I said, but I pulled him off my car. So there was this famous dancehall artist that was in that area. And, you know, he came over and so on and so forth. But that night, like, I remember my wife was pregnant with my second daughter. My first daughter was probably going 2. And I told them not to sleep at the house. So I sent them
somewhere
away, sent them back to their parents in St. Anne. I was in Trelawney at the time. And that night, like, I felt like it was a showdown night. So I opened up the place to give them access. Because I knew they would respond. But I had no fear. And I remember I felt this urge to pray. So I opened the place and I went on my knees and I prayed. And I said, Father, this is not my battle, this is yours. Take it and deal with them. Well, they did show up. And I knew when they showed up. But like I said, I had to just allow the Lord to deal with the situation. And what happened eventually is that they left. And the next day they went and said that I'm an Obia man. And I heard about it. And they said when they came to the house, all of the corners of the house, they had angels surrounding the house with flaming swords. They said it, not me.
For those of you who don't know what an Obeahman is, it's a Jamaican word for someone who sorcery
yes.
or works witchcraft.
Right.
So there were angels surrounding the house
protecting me
with flaming swords.
I won't tell you the long and the short because I don't want to, you know.
Yeah.
But somebody lost their life as a result of that thing.
Wow.
And I had warned them about it, not to trouble me like that. But I could give you several other stories like that, like the reality of who God is in my life.
Yeah.
And one of the things about me is that I'm afraid of prayer.
You're afraid of prayer?
Very afraid of prayer.
What do you mean by afraid of prayer?
It's because I know God personally. And I know if I get into the war room of prayer, I know what can happen.
Okay.
So I'm actually afraid of activating the power of God. You see what I mean? So I'm afraid of prayer because I don't want to, especially if I pray and the tears run out of my eyes for somebody, I know stuff will happen. So I try to condense because as a pastor, I've been a radical. My broken past, as course, you know me as a sports player in college.
Yeah, basketball, everything.
Basketball, track, everything. I did everything and I was at the top of everything. And in 2000, I got a basketball scholarship. In 99, I got a track scholarship. So I was destined to be like a Usain Bolt or a LeBron James. Except the Lord appeared to me personally and told me that's not the path He wanted for me. And so when I was in college now, so I was actually living the celebrity life, as you remember. I remember walking into Mandeville and people just come and offer you stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And I was like, yo, you're the greatest baller down here, so that don't know you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I was living the celebrity life in a microcosm of the reality of what the NBA or the track field world could bring. But that's a part of it. But being at school, of course, it attracts the females as well. And I developed this reputation, of course, of being as girls guy. Them kind of craziness. Which was half of the time far from the truth.
Yeah.
Most of the time, but you know what it is, it comes with the territory being popular. But after, going through a terrible breakup, I actually left college without a life partner. You know what I mean? Because it was just so hard. And so I came out with this so-called reputation preceding you. People saying, excellent, he's a charmer, he's a, that kind of stuff and stuff.
Yeah,
and
womanizer,
pastor,
whatever.
that kind of madness, right? But the reality is that, like I said, the Lord knows what He is doing with you and for you. And one of the things people must never do is to deny your truth.
Yeah.
So I've always have a strong affinity for the opposite sex. I relate better to women than I do with men. Always. So in 2012, after I got ordained and stuff, I had a meltdown experience with the church and, accusations and of indiscretion and that kind of stuff. In the middle of the marriage at that time, I was married to Dana now 4 years. And I even remember, the marriage, going through the counseling and the pastor asked, you have anything to declare? And I said, it's not so much of a declaration, but a reality. I said, I will always have more female friends than men. In fact, I don't really have male friends. I'm an alpha male, so I don't really work along well with men. And, she knows me from college. She knows I was a popular guy and so on and so forth. So if she is not able to handle and the core and the territory that comes with it, it makes no sense. So that was my declaration. And she was like, no, she was so on and so forth. Suffice it to say that, in my now life, it's all that I've been through, losing millions of dollars, tied to your salary and other investments, and losing your reputation, being battered in the streets, hearing people talk about you, tell you stuff about you that you don't know about yourself, and seeing how ministers relate to you, seeing how the church relate to you, and all of that stuff. I reached to the point where I thought I would have committed murder-suicide.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Wow.
That whole story, I can pin it to you, and probably I can put snippets of it, It's on Facebook, and it garnered a huge reaction from a lot of people. But I came to the realization of a few things in life. When your greatest ministry is firstly to understand your truth. So I grew up in a community of men who had multiple women with multiple children, and the women were cool with each other. Yes, that's what I embraced. My father too was like that. Yeah, and in fact, when he got sick in 2019, 2020, he was joking after he got the stroke that I'm like King Solomon. Because my mom was there, my stepmom, his current wife, and, different, and, he was joking about it, but the reality. So, the truth is, the Lord, in His permissive will, has allowed some things to happen, even in the church. Even right now, we try to throw cold water on something because people don't really get to live their truth.
Yeah.
And if you can't live your truth, you will always be in a prison for your lifetime.
Yes.
I have accepted that I am a charming man, and women will always be attracted to me. And so, I have accepted that as me. So I have to now find a way now to navigate it, that it doesn't become perilous to my family. perilous to my daughters, 3 daughters who look to me for leadership.
See what God do? You
He
get
said,
3 daughters
right,
now.
right. It's not perilous to my sons, because I have 2 sons, and I would not want my sons to grow up and be misguided men that are not responsible and who just live in reckless want and...
So they can say, my father did tell me, say.
Right. So I have to literally change the narrative somewhat. And by doing that, I went through the whole meltdown, step away from mainstream ministry for a while. And it was during that period that I found my truth. I wrote a book, well, 2 books, Dark Poetic Sunshine and Unveiling the Turmoil Within. So that was therapeutic because all of that is poetry. It was, dark poetry, all kind of poetry. But then I wrote another book.
Dark poetry, what you mean?
Dark kind of poetry. When
Dark?
Dark.
Okay.
Dark poetry.
Yeah.
Like
I remember
the rage that I was going through, the anger, all of that, right.
You pour the rage into the book.
Just telling it as it is. And I remember when I was, going through this stuff with the conference administration at one particular time, and the 2 administrators pulled up my Facebook because I was using it as a tool to get back at them. Because the truth is the church is not perfect.
That is very true.
We are filled of men with like passions and weaknesses and tendencies. Some are protected because of probably friendship circles and whoever, whilst others are isolated and dealt with. So I was one that was dealt with.
Yeah.
But it's not really a dealt with per se, it is preparation. Because what man means for evil, God can turn it for good. Because in the end of it, I have seen men who told me that my marriage wouldn't X and it wouldn't Y and it wouldn't Z. Next month,
them divorced.
27th of next month will be 14 years that my wife and I are married. We don't have a perfect relationship because sometimes I wonder how she even deal with me, because I'm very hard to deal with, especially now coming into midlife crisis and you're not having the financial validity and
the financial
stability that you would want, right?
Yeah.
But we find our way to get around.
Well, thank God for
and that kind of stuff. But we have a strong family, and we have 5 kids, and they are brilliant. They are super kids. So those are some of the merits. So whilst I'm down in the wilderness, the Lord is actually preparing me for a kingdom. And not only that, but like I said, embracing your uniqueness. Understand your weaknesses and your strengths. And remember that your greatest weakness can also become your greatest strength.
Yes. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you, but you touch on so many things, and one of the things that also resonated with me as well is the whole marriage and the challenges in marriage, because for me, I am in a similar situation whereby I am not on strong financial setting. However, God has blessed you and myself with great wives who are understanding of that, and they are willing to be, quote unquote, the primary breadwinner, so to speak. And it behoves
engineers of stability.
I like that term. And for me, one of the things that I look at and I try to emulate is the backing up a little bit, the strength that both of our wives show, just to be that support. Because I remember you saying earlier that you're afraid of prayer, and it can even be simplified even down to this sentence whereby the world always says, be careful what you wish for, because it just might get it.
That's correct.
And even relating it to the wife thing, before my wife, I was in a relationship, and I had actually prayed a prayer to God describing what I wanted in that relationship, physical relationship, because I wasn't a girlist. I wasn't a girl's man. I wasn't a womanizer. I wasn't a charmer at the time. And I wanted a physical relationship, and I prayed to God for that physical relationship. I got it. And that woman broke my heart.
Wow.
On Boxing Day in church during lunchtime.
Wow.
And then I prayed to God and I said, all right, God, here one, listen, I want you to send me my wife, not another girlfriend, my wife. and I stated some things which were basically describing my current wife. But I said to him, I'm going to spend 1 year being single so I could get to know myself for myself, and then you send me my wife. And when I look at all the things that is happening, even my right now, my mother and my wife are kind of best friends, both nurses, midwives, XYZ. And like almost every single time, you know, you get the temptation to, you know, want a separation or whatever, I always look back to the prayer and I said, if I do that, I'll be spitting in the face of God. Because I asked him for something and he sent it to me. Why would I then now want to throw that away? So even though things aren't easy now, I am not I am not on somebody's payroll, and I take it you're not on somebody's payroll as well. And having to be the person that is supporting the engineer of stability. As a man, you sometimes you feel less manly.
Yes, man, it does.
And it plays on your psyche. And there are times when you just have to humble yourself and say, God, all right, make us see how we can work on this. Right? And what I also look at is it won't always be like this.
True.
This is, I just said, the valley, but the valley is always, Moses had his wilderness experience, his valley experience. And everybody goes through a wilderness valley experience, and then they go up on the mountain.
And always remember that it doesn't matter how wide the valley is. The valleys are always situated between mountains.
Exactly.
Right.
And my
and somewhere in the valley is a stream that is running from
it to sustain it.
Right.
And my pastor always said, you are always either in a storm, coming out of a storm, or about to go into a storm. And I always heard him say that. And even when I was in a gainful employed in April of 2022, and I was okay, and I remember he preached a sermon, and he said, you're always in a storm, coming out of a storm, or about to go into a storm. And by the middle of April, bam, lost my job. Right? No fault of my own, mind you. I'm still okay with the boss. He's still okay with me. He said he'll give me a glowing recommendation. But the point that I'm trying to say is, no matter how high you are, you can fall.
Right.
And no matter how low you are, you can rise.
Right.
And going, I think this will be the working title for now. You said that you were called out of murder. And every time I hear you preach or speak, it is with such power and such force that I'm like, this man is meant to lead, a leader of men, meant to lead men.
Yeah.
And I've read a couple of your poems. I haven't read all of your books yet, but what I'm trying to get at is that sometimes God has to humble us.
Well, that part is probably the most telling part of my whole life, because when you find any kind of validation in life, you tend to fertilize that validation, and it can be detrimental to your ego.
Yeah.
So, being on the campus, growing up as a nobody per se, always being abused and called names and those kind of things, and then you come to college now, and all of a sudden, you are
the it guy.
The guy.
Yeah.
Like, everybody wants to talk to you. Everybody wants to be a friend. And
Yeah.
like, when I go home, I remember one night I went home and I was like, everybody's like after me, but I felt so empty. And then the compound, the influence in the background was that I was living in a house with a lot of theology majors who were studying to become pastors. And their behaviors were contrary to the standard of right. You see what I mean? So their unscrupulous activities started to confuse me, so that peer pressure eventually caused me to bow. And once I went down into Babylon, I'm telling you, I went from Babylon to Egypt to everywhere, but God was there. So I found that validation. So the point is, so when I talk to young people now, I talk to young people straight up. When I relate to men on the street, I relate to men on the street as a man who knows the street and has never been foreign, or I've never been absent from the street. I'm always in the street. I'm known as a street person. So a lot of the conventional and normalities of life, never been me. Because I tend to be real. But suffice it to say that, and I'm speaking to people now, you know, all of us will go through different experiences in life.
Yeah.
But what is most important is who you are in relation to the power of God. And let me clarify that. You see, God is all powerful and He's ever present. But because His presence is there, if you don't access it and tap into it, it's almost like it is neutralized. You have to, and that comes to a relationship. So how do you hear about God and know about God? You hear from Him and from His Word. When I was a youngster, I got into many fights. Got beat up too, but I got into many fights. And I was always praying that the Lord would deliver my enemies in my hands. So I was always a psalmist, like David before. So I would read a psalm and believe that when I go out there and fight somebody, the Lord is literally going to give me the victory over them. So I've always embraced that. And it's a similar thing in life. So even though life has, you know, I saw a post recently on Facebook, somebody put, finish this. Life gives you lemons, what do you do with it?
Some say make lemonades or whatever.
No, I make no lemonade. What I'm doing, I'm cutting the lemons and I'm planting the seeds.
Ah, that's a good one.
That's a new one. I'm cutting the lemons and I'm planting the seeds. Because you will have access to the juice, but you need to set a future. Because life is going to give you sweet and sour, high and low, good and bad, up and down. But in all things, we are more than conquerors through Him who first loved us. And once you embrace the love of God through prayer, through reading His Word, through sharing your experience, don't be afraid to tell your story. Because the church walls cannot protect you. Because what we don't understand is this. A lot of people go to church, but they are not the church.
Yeah.
Before you can go into the building, you have to build in. You have to build a relationship that is between you and God. And when that you have that built in, you can enter the building and worship. So worship truly comes from you as a temple first. So you are literally the church. So I always say to people, don't just be in the church, be the church. You see what I mean? And when you are the church, doesn't matter, no foundation, no storm of life can come and remove the church. Because the true church is the purchased blood of Christ that has ransomed you and I. And once you can find that, then eventually everything will work out.
Thank you very much, Pastor Czedale Smallwood, Minister of Religion. I really thank you for making the time. You and your family, you and your wife and your daughter are here with us. What you just said is the perfect way to end and encapsulate probably the first part of many of our future discussions. And there really isn't much other else for me to say other than thank you for watching What's It Like with YORX. And remember, we aren't all in the same boat, but we're all in the same storm. Thanks. Feel free to reach out to us at what'sitlikewithyorks@gmail.com or leave a comment in the comment section. What's It Like with YORX is recorded at Imagine Studios with me, Yorkwin. Edited by Yorkwin. Produced by Yorkwin. Music by Trilo XV.